All right, so here we are. You're in debt. 40% of you are in for over $200,000, and we're already talking about retirement. We're already talking about saving the money you don't have that you're not going to get because you're going to be paying off that debt. So it seems a little backwards. You just started. I'll start with Justin while we finish that microphone. Why are we even talking about retirement at this early stage in our careers? And if we are going to talk about it realistically, how much should I be saving at this stage of my career?
That is a great question. Actually, retirement was started back as a result of the Great Depression. It was something that was a means to get older workers out of the workforce, to bring in room for those that were unemployed to get into the workforce. So actually, retirement as a definition is an artificial timeline, which might be something you've never heard of before. But it is something that you should plan for to get ready for that second phase of your life, that transition point. From a savings perspective, we recommend that you save at least 30% of your net income. So whatever you have left over after all of your deductions, out of all your withholding, after all of your contributions, that you have that much left over that you then put to work. And we suggest that you get started on that right away because the IRS does not let you go back in time and make up for lost years for how much you can contribute to Roth IRAs, to 401ks, to 403bs, or whatever plans you have access to. Don't miss out on those because you can't go back and make up for lost time on those.
Dr. Meskett, you can't go back in a time machine. So I'm not going to ask you where you are right now, but having dealt with colleagues who have successfully and unsuccessfully managed their finances, what would you say are the consequences of inaction by a young ophthalmologist regarding the precautions to take necessary financial steps early in the career?
Well, I mean, obviously, the concern is none of us know how long we're going to be capable of working, how long we're going to want to work. And if we get ourselves into a hole out of which we can't dig out, either due to health problems or whatever other may encumber us in the future, then, obviously, many of us will look in the future to bankruptcy and things of that nature. So I think the future always remains unknown, and you have to live your life as though in two ways, right? Today's the last day I'm going to live, but what if I don't? What if I live on? And so you need to cover both bases. You have to take care of your life today, financially as well as from a health status, and you have to consider what if I live to 98 years of age. So you have to do both.
All right. Natasha, we've heard your story before from previous symposia. There were many challenges thrown at you earlier in your career. You were juggling multiple different things, switching out practices, deep financial implications. So share with this group who are at the front end of the tube right now, just entering their careers, on how do you live with that 900-pound gorilla about financial burden?
So I came out of Cornea Fellowship and I purchased the practice of a retiring physician in the Washington, D.C. metro area, which was not really my first choice, but it was such a saturated area that was really the best opportunity. And thankfully, I had a husband with an MBA, so that helped. But that really has turned out to be an excellent thing. I'm still in my first job, and I'm starting my 10th year of practice, so I stole the Yo ribbon. But yes, I'm happy where I'm at, but it wasn't easy, and I was glad that I had the help of
On a day-to-day basis, how did you cope with knowing debt and financial risk was always there? Or were you aware?
I mean, we had definitely had calculated the risk and crunched the numbers, and I knew we could make it. I knew we were going to be all right. It did help that for the first year that the physician that I was buying the practice from had arranged a salary guarantee with the hospital that he had been the chief of ophthalmology for 30 years. And so that means that whatever money that I brought in from the practice, they would make sure, if it wasn't up to the salary I had been promised, then they would make up that difference for the first year in exchange for the fact that I would be on staff at their hospital, not paid, I wasn't their employee, but I would cover their ER for them in a rotating schedule. So it was kind of like being paid for covering their ER.
Dr. Meskett.
Yeah, I'd like to comment on something Natasha said. The first thing you have to do is recognize that you are not trained for what you're going to do, and that is to run a business. all right? But she mentioned she's married to an MBA. Wherever possible, you should work with someone who has a financial concern for your financial health. A spouse, a sibling. If you look at the models from South America, from Asia, and many other places, in Europe, very often these are family organized practices, and each person contributes. The days of a solo practitioner coming out of a residency and starting a practice are over. The finances don't allow that. The time that you're out of the office doing surgery or going to state legislatures to advocate is money that's just going to waste. So the paradigm shift, and you need somebody with you who really does understand business. And if you don't have that person, then it really behooves you to go and learn all the specifics about running a business, which we're not trained to do.
I want to get started on these 5 must-dos for young ophthalmologists. Who's going to be taking us through those?
I've got some prepared.
Okay.
You got a couple?
I've
Yeah.
got answers to all of them.
All right, Justin, you go first.
Number one, I would say, is there's an idea out there that some of you may be thinking, and that is, I need to pay off all of my debt first before I save or invest $1. And if you look at most of the scenarios that we've run with hundreds of clients, that's actually not the case. So it comes back to that whole 50-30-20 rule, which is how much you should use to live, how much you should use to save, and how much you should have left over for enjoyment. That 30% should be that core number that you're putting away. So if you want to pay down debt faster, absolutely go ahead and do that, but pull from that 20% rather than digging into that 30% category that should be used for savings.
All right. Do you have a must-do, Phil?
Well, I think financial survival for the anterior segment surgeon today requires that you do some cash-based procedures, whether that be premium IOLs, refractive surgery, even dry eye management now is a cash-based condition. And so I think if you're not going to do that, then you have to practice with somebody who does. Because to live upon the reimbursements that we get for insurance companies, and depending upon the geography where you live and the rent that you're going to pay, how much your technical staff will cost, it can't possibly work out without some cash assistance. So you have to consider where you're going to practice and whether you can have a significant amount of cash-based conditions in your practice.
Natasha, give us one. Can you give us a must-do? Getting started, right at the beginning, something you got to do.
All right, well, if you are looking to either buy into a practice, start your own practice, or to even join a practice, you need to understand, and this was mentioned in previously, what the financial situation of that practice is, and get some help. Get a not only just a lawyer, because they can help you review the contract, but then an accountant that can help you look at the financials of that practice. You have to really understand where all that's coming from.
We have a question over here.
Okay.
I'm Roman from University of Wisconsin. Kind of piggybacking off that, if you're starting a practice or joining a practice, how important is it to see if there's an MD, MBA in that practice, or how do you go about hiring the financial people around you to manage costs and set different caps so you don't get in the way with your other colleagues?
Well, when we were starting to buy the practice of the physician that I was looking into, we signed a non-disclosure form. We'd already gotten, I think what we'd done to get the reference, like for a good an accountant or a good lawyer, we had talked to the Montgomery County Medical Society in our area, or you can even talk to the ophthalmology, your state society, and get some names of people, because they know the local ones and they do have specialties. If they're used to doing practice contracts, medical practice contracts, that's a specialty. So is the accountants if they're trying to value a practice for you. So it's nice to work with people like that and to get the names of those people from the medical society in your local area, which you should be doing anyway when you first get into town. One of the first things I did was join my local medical society as well as the state ophthalmology society and become a part of that. But you can get those good names and those good referrals from them, and then you start finding out. They have you sign a non-disclosure form. You can look at their last 3 years of tax returns, and they will help you decide if it's a good, sound practice.
So you have professional legal representation, financial representation. What about representation when it comes time to brokering a practice and the utility of having a third party shepherd you through that process as well? I know we're crossing wires a little bit. We'll be talking more about that later this afternoon. But do any of you have any guidance about having an outsider guide you and select your practice?
One of the things that we strongly recommend that before you even go in as an employee with a practice, if it has a partnership track, is find out what the financial status is, and you can ask for financial documents, income, profit and loss statements, balance sheets, get business valuations, things that they've had in the past, and start gathering that information at the beginning before you even join on as an employee. Most of the time, practices are comfortable and willing to share that information if they're really interested in you. You might need to sign a confidentiality agreement as a part of the process, which is totally fair. But get somebody who knows how to value things, knows how to go through the financials, who can teach you about the accounting side of being a business owner. So having a lawyer involved, having somebody like a certified financial planner who can walk you through those things is really important. And then as you're interviewing and talking with these practices, find out who's running things internally. What type of background do they have? What's their process? What type of resources and support do they have? To get a sense, are they really on top of things, or are they just kind of having some person just handle things that's really not qualified to handle those things?
Yeah, AAOE has lots of courses that involve subjects of this nature. And probably very early in your career, you should be taking advantage of what you can learn from the AAOE side of practice, how to evaluate a practice, how to benchmark a practice, and things of that nature. I would definitely take advantage of those courses.
And there are many, having brought that up, many of those programs are being recorded and they're available to you on the mobile app, and all you got to do is select it, and once it's edited and ready for viewing, it comes to you. So, and it's free, and you ought to take advantage of that. So for young people who might be in a lot of debt that are just starting off in new work, the word insurance comes to mind. So I'm going to take out an OMIC policy. Is that all I need?
Answer is no. Unfortunately, 1 out of 5 of you will have a long-term disability that can last for up to a year, 2 years. And so what you'll want to do is try to get access to discounted disability insurance plans that are designed to protect your specific occupation. You want to look at the fine print inside the contract to see how do they treat the claims process. Because there are some big name companies out there that have labeled and advertised that they have plans that are designed for your specialty, but if you read the fine print, they actually don't. One company in particular is Northwestern Mutual. They used to have one back in the 70s, and actually they stopped in 97 offering the true own occupation plan. Now they have something different. So you want to pay close attention to that. An umbrella policy is something that you should think about having as...
Repeat that again?
Umbrella.
Umbrella policy?
Umbrella policy, which you can get from your auto or homeowner's insurance agent as an add-on. It's very inexpensive, $150 a year for $1 million possibly, and it just gives you that extra layer of catastrophic coverage. And then I guess back with the malpractice insurance, how many of you know what tail insurance is? Show of hands. Claims made and occurrence-based coverage. Familiar with all that? Going into these opportunities that you'll have in front of you, make sure that you're aware of what the situation is, so that way you can see if you're going to leave the practice, what the back end looks like, because nobody wants to make a transition and have like a $30,000 or $40,000 bill they're going to have to pay as a result of that.
So this should be negotiated at the time you enter the practice?
Yes.
All right. And should your employer, I'll get to your question, sir, should your employer be covering your long-term disability insurance?
So great question. Actually, many practices will have long-term disability insurance programs, but those are not going to protect your specialty. You can't take it with you, and when you file the claim, they will do a health evaluation, which will say if you've had any health changes in the last 6 months to 2 years, you may be denied. And most of the time, the employer plans don't pay out. So you're going to want to get your own separate policy that you have that is not employer-based. It's totally individual, and then that would be separate from your employer plan if your employer plan did have one.
All righty. Dr. Master?
Yes, just a comment on insurance. You want to make sure that you have things that also protect you about accident insurance on your premises, not just for employees, but for patients as well. Things like wrongful termination. I shudder to say sexual harassment, but all of these things need to be protected. So bear that in mind when you consider insurance.
And I would also just let you guys know, I know this all sounds scary because you're like, I don't know about that, or that, or that. And you don't have to know it all. That's why I said, get yourselves a good lawyer, get yourselves a financial planner. They will tell you about all this stuff that you need to do to round out that picture, to make it so that you're doing all the right stuff. So don't expect yourself to know it all. Don't try to be the expert. Get those people to help you. That's not, you're not a financial planner. So you get that expert help. And that will help you relax a bit to, yes, listen to them and educate yourself, but don't expect yourself to be a financial planner. You get them to help you.
Justin?
One thing that I would add off of what you're just saying about insurance is you're going to have challenges with employees. It's going to come up. There's going to be conflict. There's going to be issues. And you can actually get insurance that will pay legal fees from a lawsuit if there's some sort of a claim against you from a termination perspective. So, and it's not that expensive either on the business side. So be on the lookout for that.
Are there any special considerations for someone who might be going into an academic practice? Then we'll take a quick question from the floor. Not a private practice scenario, but young ophthalmologists that are joining like a Kaiser, or maybe going to the military, or going into an institutional or academic setting. Anything, or a lot of that gets rolled into it, or they don't think of it.
Right.
Any thoughts on that?
I think obviously they wouldn't think of it, but the other side of the coin, most of that is going to be covered by the university or the military.
Right.
So I don't think as individuals they need to have that concern.
Okay. Quick question from the floor.
This question is for Justin. I'm Osama. I'm 1 year out from fellowship here in Chicago. What are your thoughts about, I hear of some people taking care of their entire student loan debt in 1 or 2 years. It seems like it would be financially beneficial. You avoid all the interest. What are your thoughts about that?
So every case is going to be unique depending on what interest rates are on people's loans. But if you model out the 5-year, 10-year, 15-year, and you look at what the net worth is at that time, if you do that and you hold off on putting that money to work and you compare the difference between one option or the other, usually the outcome is that you're in a stronger financial position if you don't pay it off that rapidly. So everybody should build out a model for yourself to see, based on income and cash flow planning, debt repayment, tax reduction, investments, retirement, estate planning, and risk management, all those areas. If you do one route versus the other, and that's what your advisor should be able to help you walk you through, is look at the projections. Am I going to be better off in the short term, medium term, and long term with one option over the other?
On a happier note, what about wills? When are ophthalmologists supposed to get a will?
Well, as soon as they have a dependent, all right? As soon as you have a dependent, you need a will. Or as soon as you have some assets, you need a will. So assets and dependents.
Wonderful. I need to get a will.
Yeah, we recommend that everybody gets a power of attorney and healthcare directive, even as an individual person, so that way your affairs can be transferred the way that you want them to be rather than the government or some other lawyer or an expensive process. And then wills and trusts will come shortly thereafter as you start to build your family out.
Any last questions? Gift cards, if you have a question. Anybody want a gift card? No. Okay. All right, well, let me, on behalf of the audience, thank you all for sharing
Bill,
your experience. Yes?
I do want to leave one last bit of advice.
Oh, please.
Because I didn't feel like I got to say this, and I think it's important to know, even if you're not going to buy into your practice right away and you're going to be hired on as an associate, I want to tell you guys, because I saw this happen so often in the DC metro area where I was at, it contributes to why there's such a high percentage of people who don't stay in their first job. It's because when you get hired on as an associate, they'll be like, oh, you try us out, we'll try you out. After a couple of years, if it's working out well, then we'll offer you a buy-in plan. But you don't negotiate that with them up front. And so then they have a non-compete. After 2 years is up, sure, they give you a buy-in offer, and it's ridiculous. It is a completely ridiculous price. There's no way you're going to pay it. And then you leave, but there's a non-compete. So now you got to move. Now you have to move out of that non-compete. And that is dangerous. You don't have any leverage at that point because you have the non-compete and you're already working for them. So if you want to someday, you don't have to exactly negotiate everything out, but if you want to someday, in a couple of years, buy into that practice, you make sure that you get that nailed down when they're going to make the offer, how much it's going to be, what it's going to be based on. So it's nailed down before you sign the contract because you have no leverage once you're already working for them. And that happened to at least 5 people in my class around me in my area. It was, and it's
Happens
it's
all the
bad.
time.
Wonderful, great advice, and thank you so much for giving your time to us today.